A geometric plane is possibly one of the simplest concepts to grasp, a flat surface extending outward in two dimensions. Everyone understands what a plane is, regardless of education or cultural setting. It's so intrinsic to our common human understanding that even Euclid in his geometric treatise on the elements has the plane essentially regarded as one of the common notions, a concept that is fundamentally accepted as being almost self-evident. You don't need to know calculus or advanced mathematical equations to calculate a plane. In fact, a plane can be geometrically described without using any equation at all, as simply being determined by three non-collinear points. So one thing I do find absolutely stunning about the survey of history in regards to the development of cosmological thought, from philosophical speculation onto scientific inquiry, as humanity allegedly crawled out from under the rock of ignorant belief in a flat enclosed world, and eventually came to embrace the reality of the heliocentric expanding universe. No one ever bothered to debunk the plane itself. No one seems to have even tried to test it, in their fervor to show that indeed the Earth was rotating around the Sun and not fixed in the center of all things. No one seems to have been very concerned with proving the ball versus a plane by simply concentrating on the ground itself. Everything that we read about it in terms of historical figures and events which played a role in the broader Copernican revolution centers around the question of the heavens. Even Eratosthenes, in his famous experiment to calculate the circumference of the Earth using the shadows of two distant sticks, was relying upon the solar luminary and making a great deal of assumptions about the Earth being round in the first place and the size and distance of the Sun in relation to it. And so it goes, on throughout the scientific progression we read about in all our official history books, from Ptolemy to Copernicus, Kepler, Newton, Galileo. The primary focus of inquiry being decidedly on that which is above. The quest always being to comprehend and calculate the motions of the sun, moon, and stars, to unlock the mysteries of those wandering stars and their retrograde motions, later called planets, and to devise mathematical laws by which everything overhead must be agreed to obey. And this effort to master all the mysteries of the heavens, to plot trajectories and orbits and gravitational dependencies, this anthology of theorized mathematical conquest, is what is unanimously assumed to confirm the rotundity of the Earth itself. And so the simple issue of testing and either confirming or disproving the plane itself was simply skipped over. Perhaps we could excuse this oversight on the grounds that for much of human history they obviously did not have the luxury of the same technological means to investigate this question as we do today. It would be admittedly difficult to use genuine scientific experimentation to measure curvature, or lack thereof, using things like mile-long measuring lines pulled tightly. But then, in 1609, when Galileo finally constructed the first telescope, his first and only inclination was to point it to the sky, to observe the celestial bodies and strive forward in his defense of heliocentricity. For the next several decades, he would keep his increasingly powerful telescopes aimed at the heavens. Never once did this man, so esteemed as a martyr for scientific truth, ever bother to tip his eyepiece laterally and use his newfound powers of magnification in order to try and observe in a more precise scientific manner the distances at which the assumed curvature of the Earth would make visibility impossible. No, there were far too many more important questions and controversies to address, such as the matters of comets or the backwards regressive politics of the Roman Catholic Church. It was not until over 200 years later, in 1838, when Samuel Rowbotham began to apply telescope technology towards his consideration of curvature over bodies of water. Not so coincidentally, this period saw the sudden discovery of the phenomenon described as atmospheric refraction. How convenient. The only alleged proofs of curvature on the ground level, which passed down through the several centuries of supposed scientific enlightenment, were unfounded wives' tales, such as the notion that the hulls of ships disappeared over the horizon first. People still use this argument today, despite the fact that science never bothered to vet this commonly held notion through actual experimentation. Today, more people than ever are familiar with the phrase, as above, so below, which for a long time was a saying confined to esoteric circles, and most people associate it with various mystical and occult interpretations, and rightly so. But only recently it dawned on me that this notorious phrase, which on its basis level I believe to be a perversion of the biblical quote, on earth as it is in heaven, it actually applies to this broader historical debate and supposed discovery of heliocentricity in a rather interesting way. The phrase begins with as above, and then that which is below takes its cue and follows suit. Of course, this has a very twisted spiritual teaching behind it in a very real occult sense, and I'm not dismissing that at all, on quite the contrary. But that's sort of my point. In relation to everything I just outlined in the progression towards the Big Bang cosmology heralded by scientism today, we see this same simple esoteric phrase as really being the template for how it all played out. As above, so below. This is also the intellectual filter through which the majority of people, even to this very day, respond to the notion of a fixed flat Earth when presented with it for the first time. The litany of objections almost inevitably includes every assumed astronomical explanation there is, from sunrises to moon phases, north and south celestial poles, the planets being spherical in appearance, the multinational space program, eclipses, equinoxes, etc., etc., etc. Always the question of the heavens are posed first. Always the model and explanations for that which is above is demanded first. And then the shape of the Earth, the actual existence of a simple curve or a plane, is essentially an afterthought. But this is why the topic continues to push on, to grow, to captivate more and more people. Despite all the petty disagreements and drama amongst flat Earth researchers, despite all the lingering questions about models and maps, it continues on, because after hundreds and hundreds of years of being distracted by trying to explain everything above, people are finally stopping and daring to first question the nature of that which is below, the simple matter of the ground beneath our feet. This is the Pandora's box that has been opened and now cannot be shut again. Planes or curves are not complex things. They can be measured. They can be observed. They can be confirmed or denied, and done so without massive government budgets or scientific institutions. This is where the science should have started all along, and it is where the issue will begin to be finally rectified as we test out which was overlooked, even though it's been right there in front of us all along.